Welcome to the hardest challenge we've faced so far in our Cosplay Academy journey, Jory. This character took us 22 attempts and nearly 28 hours before we finally completed it. I wanted to rush to complete this thing because vampires are going to be removed from the game soon, and by extension, this challenge. Let's get into the details of the challenge and what we're going to be required to complete. Jory is a vampire enchanter of Dumalacath. Let's talk about vampires first. Vampires are an undead species that won't be around much longer. The devs plan to remove vampires and replace them with a different undead race known as revenants. And after having played 22 of them now, all I can say is good riddance. Their abilities are cool and flavorful, but in the game they just feel a bit too squishy. They're labeled in game as an advanced species, which typically means that they're going to be more difficult to play effectively. You'll see exactly what I mean in a few minutes. Vampires are undead, which come with all the typical advantages and disadvantage of being so. They also have acute vision, meaning they can see invisible. They have fangs, which they can make auxiliary attacks, and if they hit a living thing, they can restore some HP. It's actually quite a bit of HP, and you'll see that soon. They can also change their blood level from alive to bloodless. I'll put up on screen the differences between alive and bloodless right now. I'm not going to go through each one, but when you go bloodless, you get less HP, you are immune to poison, you get cold resistances, and you get negative energy resistance, and you're immune to torment. You can also turn into a bat while you're bloodless, which is really cool. The raptitudes are a little wacky, with a strong preference toward dexterity weapons, stealth, hexes, necromancy, and alchemy. Everything else is kind of average to poor. Now that we talked about our species, let's take a look at our background. Enchanters are masters of hexes. They start with a +1 dagger, a +0 robe, 2 potions of invisibility, and they start with 4 spells, none of which are memorized. Ensorcelled Hibernation, Confusing Touch, Tukuma's Dance, and Dazzling Flash. They're kind of the spell-based stabber background. I actually really enjoy playing enchanters. I usually play Spriggan enchanters, but this is going to be a nice change of pace for us. Personal feelings aside, I can understand why enchanters are one of the more difficult backgrounds to start as. You don't start with any spells memorized, and you won't get one until your next level up, with Ensorcelled Hibernation at level 2. Not having a spell to get stabs makes you just kind of like a weak fighter. I guess that's what the 2 invisibility potions are for. And finally, let's talk about our god choice, Dumalacath. Dumalacath is actually one of my favorite gods, and they're very good for stabbing, but they're also good for a lot of other things too. At piety level 1, you get noise suppression, which means all noise in your line of sight is halved. This is really good for spellcasters because spells tend to make a lot of noise, and whenever you cast a spell, it's usually going to be within your line of sight. At piety level 2, we gain a shadow mimic. This little guy pops up whenever you take an action such as attacking or spell casting. He'll do whatever you do. Make a melee attack, he'll make a melee attack. If you cast a spell, he'll cast his own spell. Here's the list of all the shadow spells. There's one for each school. How it works is that if you cast a fire spell, the shadow will come in and cast Shadow Ball, because you chose a fire spell. If you say, for instance, cast an Earth Conjuration spell like Stone Arrow, there's a 50-50 chance that it will be Earth or Conjurations. Because we're going to be casting mostly hexes, we can expect the shadow to use Shadow Torpor very often. It's kind of an AoE slow attack, which slows, from what I can see, pretty much everything on screen. It says it's a penetrating beam, but I find that it tends to hit almost everything in line of sight. At piety level 3, we get Shadow Slip, which allows us to swap place with our shadow, and it will mislead enemies so that they attack it instead of us. It'll set them up for low tier stabs, which is going to be a great way to get stabs on things we can't hex or otherwise distract. At piety level 4, we get access to Aphotic Marionette. This is a really cool ability that allows you to take control of a caster and cast their spells to benefit you. If they have haste or invisibility, they'll cast it on you. You can get a free potion of haste or invis. It's really awesome. Our final ability is at piety level 5, called Primordial Nightfall. It'll reduce your line of sight to 0 for a few turns, and then it gradually gets wider and wider as turns pass. This ability is a really powerful escape tool, and it actually allows you to do a lot of wacky things like ninja items or even the orb. I'm sure that will go really well if we try that. Alright, now that we've gone over our character, let's take a look at the conducts and bonus challenges. We're going to want to complete all of these. First conduct is Uninvited Guest. Reach 6 pips of stealth or higher in the character screen. This should be pretty easy for us to do because going bloodless is going to get us most of the way there. Next up, Eternal Hunger. Prior to entering Lair, exsanguinate yourself and remain bloodless for the rest of the game. I don't have a lot of experience with vampires, but I have a feeling that you want to actually remain bloodless for most of the game anyway, so this shouldn't be too hard to do. Conduct number 3 is Glamour. Train hexes to 16 or more. I have a feeling we're going to be doing this anyway, so it's not really much of a challenge. Moving on to the bonuses, we have Backstabber. Activate Shadow Slip at least 27 times. This is a really powerful ability that's going to help us against enemies we wouldn't normally be able to get stabs on, so I have a feeling it's going to be easy to get up to 27, if not more than that. And then finally, Pitch Black. Activate Primordial Nightfall at least once and get a rune. I have a feeling we're going to need to use Primordial Nightfall at least once to get out of a tricky situation, but we'll see how it goes. Alright, now that we're familiar with the challenge, let's get into the gameplay.